Hello and welcome to Cracking the Cryptic, a brand new Sudoku podcast starring the boys from Cracking the Cryptic. I'm Peter C. Hayward.
I'm Simon Anthony.
And I'm Mark Goodliffe.
And this is the pilot episode of a brand new show in which we discuss Sudoku. Now, if you're a fan of the YouTube channel, and if you're not, you should be, it's excellent. You'll already know the illustrious Simon and Mark. They are the hosts of Cracking the Cryptic, the world's #1 YouTube channel on Sudoku. Actually, I think maybe just the world's #1 YouTube channel generally. Is that right?
Definitely, it's absolutely
Not by the official figures.
We all know they've been fudging the numbers for years. Which is actually, Simon? Why don't you describe it? How do you describe your channel?
It's a channel where every day we produce 2 videos where viewers can try a Sudoku, and if they get stuck, they can watch a video of Mark or me solving that puzzle, or hopefully solving the puzzle. I think it must sound like the most turgid, tedious thing in the world, and yet somehow it has 1/3 subscribers on YouTube and seems to scratch an itch for some people.
So I approached you guys a while back to say, hey, let's make a book. And so I'm the publisher of the Cracking the Cryptic's Greatest Hits, the world's best Sudoku book by a long shot, which is coming out very soon. And when I suggested to you, hey, have you guys ever considered doing a podcast? You thought the idea was slightly ridiculous.
Yes, because, as ridiculous as it sounds to have a YouTube channel about solving Sudoku, it's even crazier to have a podcast where you can't even see, any Sudoku-related things. So, I think we imagined it might be, well, and then I put a 3 into row 6 of the grid, and that was amazing.
It's like some people play chess just completely by saying the pieces. Yeah. Okay, so Mark, there is a 4 in row 4, column 5. There's a 7 down the bottom, and there's 2 8s in the 5th box. So it's a bit of a tricky one, this one.
It's clearly broken. Simon and I are pretty diffident guys, and we really couldn't imagine either that people would be watching the channel just for entertainment, or of course listening to a podcast for the same reason. And yet there clearly is an audience out there who just like watching us struggle with the puzzle.
So I very valiantly and selflessly volunteered to come and be on the podcast to show you how entertaining you two actually are. One of the reasons I wanted to do this is because I realized during our meetings about the book, I am one of the only viewers who's ever interacted with both of you at once. Like, there are people who have watched hundreds and hundreds of hours of your content and never seen you at the same time. You're always one of you and then the other, one of you and then the other. So the running theory, I believe, is that you're actually the same person. Well,
it's either that or there's an injunction out against one of us to not come near the other.
And during our meetings, I just really enjoyed the dynamic of the both of you together. And so I thought, hey, let's do a podcast. So let's start with the basics. Whose idea was this channel?
Well, that was Simon's idea, definitely. My memory is that he went on a skiing holiday with some friends, and Simon was always trying to come up with schemes to get out of his banking job, which he disliked. And he had a lot of mad schemes, and he probably talked about some of those with his friends. But at some point, they all mentioned that his ability to solve cryptic crosswords was interesting, and they'd be quite interested in learning about it. And maybe a lot of other people would. And of course, there's this medium YouTube where you can make videos and show people that.
And so were either of you two fans of YouTube? Were YouTube watchers?
I'm going to have to say no for me.
I guess so. I watch a lot of StarCraft videos on YouTube, and a lot of music videos as well. So, I am aware of YouTube. Although I think when we started or had the idea of starting the channel, we had no clue what we were doing. Literally no clue. The thought of a webcam was anathema. I didn't have a webcam. I don't know if you had a webcam, Mark.
My PC or laptop had one, but I had never turned it on. I had never used it for anything, and didn't know if it would work.
Had you ever seen yourself, or was this like a vampire situation where you were like, oh, that's what I look like, how lovely?
It is a bit like that.
I had heard myself and hate it. I hate my voice. So it's, that was a big
I think that's universal, though. Everybody hates their voice, but I also don't often see myself even in a mirror during the day, so it's all a bit horrific actually seeing yourself talking.
It is. I totally agree. It is horrific. That is a very good description of it. Whenever I have to edit the video that I've just made, I've just done it now. I've just finished recording a video. Glum Hippo's Astral Cat Puzzle will hopefully be appearing this evening. And, I'm looking at myself thinking, why do you look like that? Why? Why couldn't I be handsome and suave and debonair, and that would make the channel go massive? Instead, I look like this. Well, this
is why you have Mark. Dweeby. He provides the brains and he provides the looks. That's the.
Well, absolutely not. We've often talked together about how much better the channel would be if we had a front person who was handsome and young and appealing just to look at.
One of your more famous followers is James Charles, who is a man who is very famous for doing makeup. So have you guys ever watched that and been like, aha, that's the missing ingredient?
I think that makeover challenge is frankly a step too far even for James.
he hasn't approached us yet to ask us to do that. I think because of fear on his part.
And so, Mark, you've been doing this channel for years now, right? We're up to 2-3 years?
Yeah, we've certainly been doing it for 3 years. That's right.
And so in those 3 years, in your relationship with YouTube, have you started watching YouTube, or are you still kind of log in, upload your video, and then walk away again?
No, I watch a fair amount of YouTube now. I'm just much more in the flow of it, not for any particular reason. I don't watch it to sort of compare performances or anything like that. I have kids who are very into it because they're teenagers, so they have sort of clued me into a few things as well. So I have a much better relationship with YouTube than I ever did before.
That was actually one of the things I wanted to mention. I don't know if you guys know this, but YouTuber overtook astronaut for the first time as the career that kids most want. Something like from the 70s until now, it's always been astronaut. And then recently it switched from astronaut to YouTuber. So you two are essentially living the dream of every teenager in Britain right now.
That's a great fact. And I feel really guilty taking one of those spots from someone who actually wants it.
It's the first time in my life, though, that I've actually, when I meet new people and that, if you have that conversation about what you do for a living, and I actually like telling them. So, when I left university, I became an accountant. I mean, that's a conversation killer. And then I moved into investment banking, which I never wanted to talk about because I never had anything good to say. And now I can say YouTuber. And it's funny, the reaction you get is always, they're not expecting it. They're not expecting a middle-aged guy to say he's a YouTuber. And it actually is, it's great.
So one thing that you might not be aware of, so I've recently got super into TikTok. I've just dived deep into the world of TikTok. And there's a thing on TikTok which is #accountant, because someone wrote this song about being a struggling actor. And he's like, I'm a struggling actor. I can never get gigs. When people ask me what I do, I don't tell them that. I say I'm an accountant, because no one ever asks any follow-up questions if you say you're an accountant. And so it's this little song that goes, where do you work? At a place where accountants work. And so it's just like the most like, I'm an accountant, don't ask me any questions. And so weirdly enough, the sex work side of TikTok has picked up on this. And now #accountant on TikTok means that you're a stripper, or you have an OnlyFans account, or you do something where you sell lewd images of your body for money. So next time you tell someone you're an accountant, just watch out for that.
Peter, I'm thrilled to learn that you know about the sex work side of TikTok.
It's kind of funny song. I'll put a link to the song in the show notes. And yeah, it's some actual accountants joined TikTok and started talking about their job, and they got these huge followings, and they were like, why are all these people interested in accountants?
That's brilliant.
It doesn't make any sense.
Well, we both come from an accountancy background, so it certainly works for us.
So, Mark, do you tell everyone that you're a YouTuber, and what kind of reactions do you get?
Because of COVID, I haven't met anybody since I could begin to claim that my main job was as a YouTuber. My daughter told one of her teachers, because she was asked, what does your father do? And it led to exactly the same conversation Simon described. Wait, what? And I had to find out more. But no, I haven't had the experience yet. I mean, I dare say at some point I will, but I do also do a bit of work still in the financial sector. So I like to pretend that's what I am really.
Are you embarrassed? Do you have a secret underground career as a Sudoku YouTuber?
I am a bit, yes. People I know in my professional life, I really don't want to bring up the idea that I'm making YouTube videos about Sudoku to, because of the fear that they will think it's frivolous and trivial. Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. See, your reaction, Peter, is exactly the same as mine. I do not understand. Because the funny thing is, Mark, I think that you know, your passion in life, you know, is puzzles. You absolutely love puzzles. And yet you sort of hide it under a bushel that's such an enormous part of your life. Yeah.
I desperately try and keep it secret in the world of finance, yes.
Has no one told Mark how YouTube works?
Luckily, it seems that almost anybody I interact with doesn't know much about it.
Wow.
You know, either they're being very polite and very secretive, but, you know, a few people know that I have a record of winning Times Crossword Championships. Very few people ever mention the videos.
That's so interesting. It's obviously you guys really took off during COVID. Basically, the lockdown happened. Everyone was like, you know what I want to do right now? I want to watch hours and hours and hours of people solving Sudoku, which is really worked for everyone, I think, because it's such great content. So I'm guessing that as a result of that, you've never been recognized. Like, no one's ever been like, hey, it's you from the Sudoku channel.
No, that's one of my ambitions, is for that to happen. It's not happened yet.
I honestly think that by now it would have somewhere if it wasn't for COVID and the fact that nobody goes out anymore. So I think it's going to happen, but it hasn't for me. So I'm delighted about that.
Delighted that it hasn't happened, or delighted that it's going to?
Yes, delighted it hasn't happened. I don't need that in my life in any way.
This is so interesting. I had no idea that this is your secret shame. Your secret 350,000 subscriber shame.
Well, it's not. As a puzzle solver and as a YouTuber, I'm very proud of the channel, and I'm delighted to be that Mark Goodliffe. But when I'm out on my own, or, you know, in the area I live in, I really don't want anyone to know anything about that.
So let's talk about COVID. Before the pandemic hit, do you guys remember what your subscriber numbers were roughly?
We got over 1,000 after about 15 months, which is important because it's a monetizing floor. And I think by the time the lockdown began, was it something like 30,000, Simon?
I think it was more. I think it was more like 80, okay. But I might be misremembering. But it is certainly, an enormous order of magnitude different to what happened in the last year.
Because I not to get all hipster on it, but I was one of your subscribers before the lockdown. I think.
Well,
you were that
it's
one.
A badge of honor. There are, I think people can feel proud if they'd found us before the lockdown, because it was a little bit under the radar at that point.
So one of the reasons I got in contact with you guys in the first place is that after watching your videos, I became a Sudoku setter, a Sudoku solver and then a setter. I'd done, newspaper computer-generated Sudokus for all of 6 months back in 2010. And then I got to the point where nowadays I look back, I'm like, oh, I didn't know what an X-Wing was. But at the time, I lived in Melbourne at the time, and there was a paper that did a Sudoku every day. And so it was easy, medium, hard. Every Friday was hard, and I could never solve any of them. I couldn't even get more than 1 or 2 digits in. And so I got very frustrated with the whole ordeal and threw it out. And so your videos, I'm a Sudoku setter, the publisher of the book, but more than anything, I think I'm a fan. That's why I wanted to come on the show and provide that perspective. Watching your videos just made me be like, holy heck, there is a whole world of Sudoku outside of those, computer-generated ones in the newspaper. So the obvious distinction is that you guys use a lot of Sudoku variants, but more than that, but as well as that, you really focus on handcrafted Sudokus. Do you want to talk on what differentiates a computer-generated Sudoku and a handcrafted Sudoku, beside the nominative difference?
Everything. I was actually asked a question about this the other day, and I said something that I said it off the cuff, but I thought back on it afterwards and thought actually that was quite a sensible thing to say, which is I think that the Western newspaper editor has done Sudoku a great disservice, really, because although they've flooded the market with these computer-generated puzzles, your average person's experience of Sudoku is nothing like what it should be. Because if you ever have done a handcrafted puzzle, it's like you're being led on a journey by the setter. The setter incorporates some very specific logic that he wants you to find, but you have to think about the puzzle in order to find it, and you get led on these wonderful trips. And every Sudoku of that nature has a story. And if you've never done handcrafted Sudoku, none of that story exists, because the computer doesn't understand how to tell that story. The computer just, it throws out a billion puzzles, then it sorts them by some algorithm that, it creates a very monotone experience. And I think the three of us on this podcast will all have experienced that when we do even good computer-generated puzzles. The New York Times Sudoku is a decent computer-generated puzzle, but it has none of the romance, it has none of the really clever logic that you see in the puzzles that are on Cracking the Cryptic. And so, I think, you look at companies like Nikkei in Japan, where they will not publish computer-generated puzzles. It's just anathema to them. They can't. I think that a Western newspaper editor could make a killing if they just took a bit of a gamble and said, "Look, we're going to move in to handcrafted space, and we are going to try and up the quality of our puzzles and try and capture that market." Because I think it would take time, but there would be a massive audience for it.
I think that's been proven by the success of your channel.
Maybe.
Because speaking as a fan, I enjoy watching you guys. I think you guys are fascinated. But as well as enjoying the channel and the content, it has made me completely fall in love with Sudokus, to the point where that is now my main hobby. When I have downtime, I pull out a Sudoku, and that's what I do with my time. Whereas a year and a half ago, that wouldn't have even been on the list of things to consider. Actually, I have behind me right now, because we were publishing the book, I just went on Amazon and bought the most popular Sudoku book that I could find. And it's a book of 1,000 plus Sudoku puzzles. And I got it not to be particularly inspired, but just for the listener at home, Simon just committed suicide. So that's one fewer host of Cracking the Cryptic. By the end of the second episode, we'll be down to 0, and then my channel takeover will be complete.
You literally couldn't hope to anger him more than by buying a book of 1,000 computer-generated Sudokus.
I was just admiring your bookshelf behind you. There's one book on your bookshelf called Gnomes, which I thought sounded brilliant. And then you've pulled that one off, which the Sudoku one.
Well,
not so
I bought
much.
this one because we're publishing a book, and I wanted to see how they lay it out, how they introduce the concepts of Sudoku, how big the pages are, what kind of paper they use. If I'm making something, I really want to dive into it and see how they do it. And I took this with me on a holiday because I was like, I'll do some Sudokus, and I think I got 3 in before being like, they're just not that much fun. Like, I see now why I had this brief romance with Sudoku in 2010 and then left it again. And so even just Logic Masters Germany, which is, do you want to, Mark, do you want to tell us what Logic Masters Deutschland, as they call it, is?
Logic Masters Deutschland is a site where very much proper Sudoku compilers have been posting their puzzles for many years. And it's a really useful space so that the whole Sudoku community knows about it. They visit it if they're really interested in testing and finding quality puzzles, and therefore the puzzles can get rated. Constructors can get known there. It's a very interesting forum.
It's a fantastic resource. Yeah. It's not just Sudokus too. It's all logic puzzles.
That's
everything
true.
from the old school, your neighbor has a dog and his neighbor has a cat, and the horse and the elephant don't live next door to each other. Everything up to Sudokus, to Sudoku variants. And so all of my puzzles are posted on Logic Masters Germany. Again, link in the description if you want to go do some puzzles by me. To jump back to what Simon was saying about computer-generated puzzles versus handcrafted, it makes me think a lot about the current debate that's going on with AI and creative careers, because a thing that people do is like, hey, listen to this song. Haha, bet you didn't guess that was actually constructed by an AI. I say constructed, I'm too deep into the world of Sudoku. That was actually composed by an AI. And it's kind of like, wow, I guess they will take our jobs. Except it's not that you can't tell the difference. It's that a AI-generated song has never become a number one pop chart because it doesn't have that connection. It doesn't have the journey and the heart in it that a composed song by a human does.
I think that's right. There's a certain degree of creativity and innovation and just brilliance. As Simon mentioned, the journey that you get led on, if the steps on it are gorgeous, that's something that a human can do, but an AI is unlikely to. I don't quite see it that an AI could never produce a number one song or a brilliant Sudoku. It's just extremely unlikely. It's like chimps tapping on typewriters. You know, they're going to come up with something good once in a while, but it will be very rare.
And even then, you need such a level of curation to go through the 10,000 and be like, okay, this one's actually good. You might as well just make one.
Correct. Absolutely right.
So you mentioned earlier that when the channel started, it was actually about solving cryptic crosswords, which I know is a passion of both of you. Now, for listeners who don't know what a cryptic crossword is, do you want to give me a quick summary? Is it a British thing or is it worldwide?
It's mostly British. It has spread to Commonwealth countries, and there is a little bit of penetration into the USA as well, but it's mostly British. English is a language that lends itself to wordplay because it has a huge vocabulary full of what would otherwise be very redundant synonyms a lot of the time, but they're very useful for crosswords. And a cryptic crossword clue is one that includes a definition, like an American crossword clue, but also has some wordplay to allow you to another way to get at the answer. And that allows the compiler of the crossword to come up with a misleading way of defining or cluing the word that kind of takes your mind on a little trip somewhere before you work out how to put it together. And you get a little aha moment with each clue that you solve.
Is there a handy one, and if not, we can just cut this out. Is there a handy one that would work in podcast format, like a cryptic clue that is your all-time favorite or anything like that?
Well, not that's my all-time favorite, but we do a cryptic clue every day now on Twitter. Yesterday's one was quite nice. It was 4 letters, Amundsen's forwarding address.
Which is a slightly odd clue in that it doesn't have a wordplay element. It just is a weird definition of the answer.
It's a weird definition, but I think it has the aha moment when I tell you the answer. So it's a reference to Roald Amundsen, who was a very famous explorer.
Antarctic explorer.
Yeah, so he in his race for the pole.
I thought you said cryptic explorer.
No, Antarctic. He in the race to the South Pole. Obviously, it was on sledges pulled by dogs. So Amundsen's forwarding address, the answer is mush, because that's what he might have said to his dogs in order to move forward.
Oh, address both meaning where you live and also something.
Yeah, so the idea of the clue is that it completely misleads you. You think it's, Amundsen's moved house somewhere. Well, it's some reference to where he's moved house, whereas it's obviously not that in terms of the actual answer.
So I went on a little journey of my own with cryptic crosswords in that I actually don't even know if we have them in Australia. But I've done normal crosswords
You
again.
do, yeah.
But, we do.
Yeah.
I'd done standard crosswords and been like, okay, this is a thing, sure, just like Sudokus. Got into your channel, got into Sudoku, was like, oh man, these boys are also very much into cryptic crosswords. Maybe I'll get into that as well. So I clicked through until I found one. And the first one I found was Mark solving the hardest cryptic crossword that made us look like that. It was just incredibly difficult. And so it was like jumping into Sudoku with, one of Al Haupt's 3-hour puzzles. And as Mark is talking through his solution, I'm sitting there being like, I don't know what any of this means. This is all this.
Yeah,
it seemed like the most gate-kept hobby of all time.
That's like learning to swim in a piranha-infested pool of the Amazon. You don't do that.
So I basically clicked away from the video and was like, okay, cryptic crosswords, definitely not for me. They seem terrible. Only terrible people do them. No, thank you. And then just recently you started posting these clues on Twitter every day. And it's really interesting just seeing like, here's a clue and here's 2 to 3 hints. But then at the end of the week, you went back and explained all of them. And I was like, oh, I get it now. I see the beauty. So like Amundsen's forwarding address means nothing to me. You can say 4-letter word, Amundsen's forwarding address. I'm like, okay, this is a fun game for me to watch you play. But then you give me the answer and you talk me through it. And I'm like, oh, I see. It's exactly like Mark said. It's that aha moment. So I've gone the full 360 on cryptic crosswords. Where I was like, oh, they sound cool. Oh, they sound terrible. Oh, they sound cool again. So why did
Which is just like the journey on Sudoku.
Exactly. So with your channel, why did you switch from Crosswords to Sudoku?
In the early days, we thought that a bit of variety might be interesting because we are fans of Sudoku as well. So we did one or two just to kind of mix it up, because otherwise we were just sort of doing a Times crossword every day, or it was getting a little bit samey. And it was just demand, basically. Over time, we began to realize that more people were interested, more people were commenting, more people were engaging and wanted to learn about Sudoku. And we didn't really realize there was so much to teach or explain about it, but there really was.
Why do you think Sudoku grabbed people's attention more than cryptic crosswords?
For me, I think it's an absolutely incredible idea for a puzzle. First of all, it is really simple to understand, but it has layers of complexity in it when it gets difficult, even for classic Sudoku, let alone the variants, which really add just levels of dimensions of challenge and interest. So it's the simplicity and yet the depth of it, which is like Bushnell's law of gaming, I think. You know, the simpler a game is, and yet the harder it is to play well, the more perfect it is.
Like Go, or yeah.
Exactly, and it's absolutely perfect like that. It's obviously language neutral. It's worldwide available. Everybody's kind of seen it somewhere, so it's something that everybody has engaged with, and that's very different from the cryptic crossword experience worldwide.
So I'm going to ask you a difficult question, which is, do you prefer Sudokus or cryptic crosswords? If you had to choose one that you could never do again and one you had to solve for the rest of your life, which would you pick? If that's too difficult, you can instead tell me which of your children you prefer.
Much easier. And I will never tell you. I don't know. They're just so different. I can't even answer. I can't even engage with the question. It doesn't really mean anything to me. Go on, Simon.
No, that's a funny one as well. I'm not sure. I think I know the answer to that.
Contrary to what Simon was saying earlier, I find a fairly ordinary Sudoku better than an ordinary cryptic crossword. But a brilliant cryptic crossword is better than a brilliant Sudoku for me.
Interesting.
I'm not sure I agree with that, because I think that if I think about the great cryptic crosswords that I've done in my life, they are very memorable. And that's a quality as well that I think differentiates computer-generated stuff from handcrafted stuff, is can you remember it? Now, I've never done a computer-generated puzzle that I remember doing, apart from maybe it was so awful, you know. Whereas with handcrafted stuff, there are loads of Sudokus on the channel I remember now solving. You know, I remember exactly the logical path I went on and the emotional journey I went on to solve the puzzle. And with the very best Sudokus, it's a bit like solving those amazing listener cryptic crosswords where there's a sort of a penny drop moment where all of a sudden the stars align and you understand and you realise the brilliance the compiler has brought to bear on the thing, and it's revelatory, and but it's also similar. So the two puzzles are similar in that they can give you that sort of epiphany, that, you know, that shot of adrenaline that you don't get from many other things.
When Sudoku first came out, I met a lot of crossword people who were getting very scared and worrying it would take their audience away, and the hilarious comment that many of them made to me was, I can remember many crossword clues that I've enjoyed and their answers, but I have never remembered 947368125 from a Sudoku. Well, you watch our channel and suddenly you do remember Sudokus that you've solved or seen solved and how they worked and what the break-ins were. They're really interesting. And I think Sudoku is still very much in development. And it really has a journey to go on. The crossword has done most of its journey.
Yeah, I mean, if you compare even to a year ago, Peter, where the Sudoku world was to where it is now, the quality of the puzzles, it's unbelievable what is being produced now.
The presentation of them, as Simon's about to say, the presentation of them with no givens anymore, with just one or two little constraints and a few clues in the grid, and yet they're solvable Sudokus. We weren't seeing, when we started solving Sudokus in the channel, if they existed, we didn't know about them. There were very few.
Right.
They may have been on Logic Masters Germany, but they weren't readily available. There'd been, there was 1 or 2 puzzles from the World Championship every year that people would come back talking about. Now, every day on the channel virtually, we have a puzzle of that quality. And it's amazing. It really is amazing.
It's funny. While I was preparing this interview, I was wondering if you guys think of yourself this way. You two are probably the 2 most famous people in the Sudoku world. I think hands down. I don't think there's any competition there really. Is that something that you're aware of? Like, you're talking about all these developments in the world of Sudoku, and I think it's pretty safe to say they came about because of your channel. Like, you've taken this art form that you clearly love, and through the community that you've built and through the conversation that you've inspired, you've really elevated it, I think, to this new level.
That's I think that's wonderful, but I don't feel like I deserve credit for anything, if you see what I mean.
I was actually crediting Mark.
Yeah,
you're there too, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Mark deserves all the plaudits.
With his secret hobby.
I agree with Simon, though. All we've done is bring these puzzles to people's attention. But then again, as Simon said, the last year of development of how puzzles are constructed is really interesting, because I do feel quite proud that the channel may have helped take Sudoku in a great direction. So that is something to be aware of, I think.
We're aware of it, but I don't think we feel very... I don't feel like I deserve any credit for it. All I've done is introduce the puzzles to people and shown them the beauty.
Yeah, I mean,
That's all, the beauty is there. It's being created. It's like saying, look at this beautiful person over here. That's all I've done.
I think that's absolutely right. We're not the best solvers in the world. We're not the best entertainers. We're not the best explainers, but we're okay at that. And it's the puzzles that then get allowed to shine.
Are you two familiar at all with the world of competitive Tetris?
A very, very little bit, yes.
No.
So Tetris obviously has been around since the 80s or the 70s, whenever it was invented, and people have been playing it for all that time. And yet, in the last 3 years, the world records have been halved or something like that. Like, they've gone this enormous difference from... I'm going to make up numbers because I don't know them. From a high score of 10 million to a high score of 20 million. They've just completely transformed. And it's because of Twitch. So Twitch is a website where you can go online and watch people streaming video games. And people were streaming Tetris. And so the world's best Tetris... I was going to say solvers. I really spent too much time around Sudoku. The world's best Tetris players would go on Twitch and play, and the other best Tetris players would watch them and pick up techniques and incorporate that into their playing, and so on and back and forth and back and forth. And so your channel, in a sense, is doing that, where you're taking some of the most fascinating techniques. I'll use the Facile theorem, because that's, I think, probably the one that you've most obviously shone a light onto, which is that Facile, one of the world's best Sudoku setters, who, again, was inspired by your channel to start setting, discovered that there's a certain arrangement of digits in a Sudoku which match up to others. Not doing it visually is going to be a nightmare, so I'll just leave it at that. And so because of that, now when anyone's setting a Sudoku, they have that as a tool in their arsenal, and they create kind of more intricate logic and more, I don't want to say complex because that sounds like it's just work for the sake of work, but they can do more interesting things with the Sudoku solved than they ever could before. And so just like the Tetris community, it's all of these things coming together and bouncing off each other that's really elevating it. And so yeah, you guys are like the container in which all these things are able to bounce around. It's fascinating to watch. It really is.
It is.
Yeah, and it might be developing away from us. One of the really big changes in the last year is the Discord server that's that's been created. Well, it's not our Discord server, but it's called Cracking the Cryptic's Discord server because it does the sorts of things that we're interested in. And exactly as you described, the meeting of minds on there, the collaborations, the discussions, the ways people are thinking about Sudoku now, it's just so thrilling to see. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, when was Sudoku invented? 2004, something around that time?
Well, popularized 2004. It was originally invented and appeared in Nikolai up to 20 years before that. But it hit the newspapers in 2004 and became famous basically in 2005.
When did you two get into Sudoku?
Right then. We were subscribing to the paper that started publishing it. I think literally, I actually remember we had weekly meetings at a Pizza Express that was between where both of us worked. And we would turn up and discuss crosswords or speed solve them against each other. And one week Simon said, "Did you see this puzzle in the paper?" And he got out the Sudoku puzzle and I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Did you try it?" And I said, "Yeah, it's really interesting." And he said, "I think so too. You know, this is quite, we should definitely race at this as well." And we did that. And, we were into it, therefore, from day one in the first newspaper that started popularizing it. So we were right on board with that train.
You bought the paper and you thought, you know what, we should go onto this website that doesn't exist yet and make a YouTube, make videos every day where we solve these for people who don't know we exist. So of the two, who is the fastest Sudoku solver?
Oh, Mark is much faster than me. Much faster.
Interestingly, in those first weeks, Simon was faster than I was. But then I just got after it. So I'm much faster I'm not going to lie, I'm faster at anything normal. However, at spotting the...
Wait, are we limiting this to Sudoku or just anything normal?
No. It's still in Sudoku. When it comes to these break-ins for the sorts of puzzle we're eulogizing now, Simon is far better than I am. Far better at spotting the logic, the beauty, the cleverness that people are going for. In some ways, I don't like it because it's kryptonite. It takes away my ability to solve a Sudoku quickly. But obviously, I do like the elegance and the fun and the cleverness. So, I put up with it, but it makes him better.
And then, Mark, I've been editing the Cracking the Cryptic book, and we were going through your bios. Now, am I correct in understanding you are the world's fastest cryptic crossword solver?
Well,
oh, come on.
Probably.
I've
Simon's
won.
nodding.
I mean, actually, I'm going to interrupt now. No, I have to.
No, don't
because
do that.
You're going to play it down and be British about it.
No,
I will give my perspective on this, and then he can gainsay me if he wants to. But Mark is not just the fastest cryptic crossword solver at the moment currently in the world. He is the fastest cryptic crossword solver there has ever been by a street. There's one guy, a guy called John Sykes, who people sometimes talk about from the 70s and 80s, who was also a prodigious winner of the Times Crossword Championship. From all of the benchmarking I'm able to do, I think Mark is different gravy. And it's, if you look at the Times Crossword Championship over the last 15 years, Mark is not just winning slightly. He doesn't. It would be like Usain Bolt finishing the 100 meters in 6 seconds. That's how far ahead Mark is of the next best. Now, Mark will say, yeah, but there's other guys who are very quick or up and coming. And yeah, he's right that some of these guys may get closer to him in time. But in my opinion, on any puzzle that is not a crapshoot, i.e. is not just incredibly easy, so it's how fast can you write the answers in, anything that requires actual real cryptic crossword solving, he will destroy a field by 20%. He'll be better than them by 20%, at least. And I don't say it, it's annoying for me to say that. I don't like bigging him up. but it is actually true.
I'm not going to dispute most of that. I mean, John Sykes, I never competed against him. He won 10 championships. He deliberately stepped down from some every other year to give other people a chance. And who knows how many he might have won. I've won 12, and I missed 5 years when they didn't run the competition when I was at my peak. So, they're fairly similar records. And I do worry. There's a guy who solves most puzzles quicker than I do now, according to the online statistics. But it would be interesting to see that happen in a competition.
And how are you going to respond to the doping allegations?
By taking more dope.
I did used to wonder this. I was like, how is he doing this? Is he going to the toilet or something before it and doing some sort of speed or chemical enhancement that is just making his brain
a dictionary
so much quicker than the rest of the world? It was just irritating.
And that came across the first time we met. Simon had watched the final of one of the championships, which I hadn't won. I'd been quick, but I had made an error. And he wrote to me after he tracked my email down and wrote to me and said, "How the heck do you do it? I need to learn." That's how we met.
Yeah.
When was this?
That was in 2000.
2000, yeah.
And so have you guys been close ever? Are you best buds?
Well, about 4 months after that, we did meet up. There were a number of weird coincidences about us. We were both chartered accountants, had been to public school, had partners called Anna, had been born in the same hospital. And it was like, oh, that's a bit strange. But Simon did think about crosswords
you were,
the same way I
You were hatched.
Well, I
different.
dare say, yes, very different.
And is it the same Anna?
No, it was. They were different Annas. That's a scary thought, Peter.
You just didn't notice? You're like, wait a second.
Well,
Your wedding pictures look a lot like my wedding pictures.
Now that would be a story.
no one suggested that before.
I lost my train of thought now.
Yeah, we did become friends quite quickly then, and I think we gradually grew to be closer friends over time, and always had these interests. And once Sudoku started, it doubled the amount of things we were interested in together.
Yeah, I mean.
So are you guys interested? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, well, we've been doing sort of ventures together. When did we start the Magpie? Was that 2005-ish or
2003?
2003.
So for the benefit of the listener, what is the Magpie?
Subscription crossword magazine that we started. There was a guy called Mike Rich who used to be the listener crossword editor, which is a very prominent position in the world of crosswords. And unfortunately, he had a magazine called Tough Crosswords, and unfortunately he died. And his widow wondered whether anybody in the crossword community might be interested in sort of keeping it going, and we discussed it and thought, yeah, maybe we could do this, and so we did it. I mean, we were completely clueless with hindsight about what was involved in running a magazine. So we had to, all we had to do was to produce it was paper in those days. It wasn't online at all. So we had to produce, a short magazine. It was, what would it be, 15 pages, something like that, every month?
About a dozen pages, yeah. With 6 crosswords in.
Yeah. And the rest dedicated to StarCraft.
Well, 6 crosswords, the answers to the previous months, and 1 page of chat or something. That's all it was. But the crosswords were very high quality from some of the best compilers. We did 1 each, and we had to kind of edit 4 others. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but my God, it took a lot of time.
Oh, but it was a mission. It was a mission. And even printing the thing out and folding it up and putting it in envelopes would take hours and hours and hours every month. I used to hire a meeting room where I worked at the time. And we'd sit there in the meeting room just folding away.
After hours. Yeah.
If we weren't already calling this Cracking the Cryptic, 1 page of chat would be a great name for this podcast. So were you guys compiling 6 crosswords every month?
No, I mean, we were 1 each and editing 4 others by other people who would send them to us.
Basically. So you get submissions in.
Exactly.
How many of these magazines were you printing?
We had a subscriber base. So in the first year, we sent the first magazine out to 800 people. We got addresses from the listener, and
you hand folded every single one of them.
Simon got a group of colleagues to work to help us, which was great. But after that, it was about 200 magazines every month.
Was that mostly just so you had to fold left? You're like, guys, it's very exclusive now. We really don't want you reading this. So.
Well, I mean, this is the whole thing with crosswords. It's just not a huge participation thing. There were 200 people who liked the idea of these hard crosswords that we were really into and wanted more of them, and this was the way to get them to them. So it was really just it wasn't a money-making scheme. It was just a way to kind of recycle the money from people who wanted to solve the puzzles to the constructors.
And how long did you guys run the magazine for?
It still exists.
Oh, really?
Okay.
That's great.
It's a different editorial team.
Do you still compile a crossword each month?
No, I do one or two a year. Simon's largely dropped out. There's 4 other guys who help edit it and create it. It's moved online. It's got a little bit more normal.
You can plug the URL if you want.
Yes, it's at pymag.com. That's where to find it. So it's called The Magpie, but of course magpie.com had gone, so it's at pymag, PIEMAG.com.
And happen to know there's a little story behind the name here.
Yeah, the name came... crossword compilers traditionally have...
You're both married to the same magpie.
Compilers always have pseudonyms for this sort of crossword, for some reason founded in history. And mine was based to some extent on my name. So I called myself Mr. Magoo. That takes the MA from Mark, the GOO from Goodliffe, and my initials are MR. So Mr. Magoo seemed a good nickname for me. Simon used the old nursery rhyme and decided to call himself Pieman. And then when we were thinking about the name for the magazine, we took the first 3 letters of my supposed surname, Mag, and the first 3 of his, Pie, and that made something that made sense.
It feels like it's just cryptic clues all the way down.
Well, it is, at every level. Turtles all the way down, exactly.
And so now that you two aren't running it, do you know how long it takes them to fold the electronic magazine each month?
It still takes a fair amount of compiling effort just to
absolutely.
edit the puzzles, but it's the folding, thank God, has largely gone. There's still 10 people left who get a paper copy because they're not online.
Oh, really?
Can you believe that?
I guess that makes sense. Like the audience for cryptic crosswords, I can imagine that not
Yeah.
having the same overlap. So speaking of compiling, you guys are obviously best known as presenters, I suppose, presenters of the Sudoku show. And then secondarily, I'd say as solvers. But you guys also compile Sudokus. You guys made a puzzle hunt, and you've compiled various other Sudokus over time. Do you see yourselves as compilers, or is that just something you kind of do out of necessity?
A bit of both. I don't know if it's spilling secrets that most of the compiling that we do would be at my door. You know, I do the bulk of what we do as Cracking the Cryptic, as constructing. And the trouble is, I just don't think I am fit to wipe the shoes of the proper constructors anymore. You know, I can put a puzzle together and it can be quite interesting, but there's a huge extent to which I'm relying on a decent idea, maybe a break-in, and then it's luck after that, I find, if the puzzle works quite well. And you kind of have to throw things out and play around with it a bit to make it consistent throughout. And I can do that, but I just can't bring the levels of intricacy throughout the puzzle that some of these constructors can. So, you know, I still feel I'm learning.
I think a lot of it, though, is time. Yeah, it's time. I mean, if we published a video a couple of days ago on the channel, Jovial, talking about how he set a really great puzzle he made called Syzygy. And, you know, I think he says in that video it took him 70 hours to set that puzzle. So, you know, the thought of us having, you know, 70, I mean, we don't have half an hour, you know, to do this podcast recording, you know, is, you know, we have to sort of work out whether it's possible to do it, because one of the things they don't tell you about running a YouTube channel is actually it takes a lot of work just to keep on top of the social media, the emails, and that's before you get to recording a video every day and uploading it and editing it, etc. It's a lot.
You guys do have an intense upload schedule. Go ahead, Mark.
Well, yeah, I was going to say exactly that. To some extent, it's a conscious choice. We've made the decision to, since lockdown began anyway, a year ago, to create one video a day each. We've made the decision to have an email address that people can write to us at and send puzzles into. We've made the decision to be alive on Twitter and Instagram and do that sort of stuff. So, you know we've brought it on ourselves, but it is still a heck of a lot of work. And fun though a lot of it is, it just takes a lot of time. And as Simon says, the idea of having even 20 or 30 hours to spend creating a really good puzzle. It's just not going to happen. I can't see a window when that could occur. No.
Probably the thing I'm best known for in the Cracking the Cryptic community is running the ARG that happened last year, is the run up to the Kickstarter. And I really wanted to run that. I've run ARGs before, but I wanted to combine ARGs and Sudokus. That just seemed really exciting. So I just blocked 6 weeks away. I was just like, for the next 6 weeks, this is all I'm doing. I think it's spent like maybe half a day a week on like all my other tasks, but I was like, nope, if this works, it's going to be great. And I track my hours, and I think I spent something like 270 hours putting that ARG together. It was just, I'd wake up, work on it, go to sleep. Wake up, work on it, go to sleep. And even with that buffer, even like trying to get it 6 weeks ahead of time, some of those puzzles, I hope I hope no one will judge me too harshly. Some of those puzzles I was making about an hour before they were discovered. At one point, I had to pull an all-nighter just to get it done.
That's terrifying. I mean, you spent 270 hours on it. My timesheet says I spent 40 hours testing and
intense.
Trying and coming up with tweaks to puzzles and the ARG as well. It was incredibly brilliant, and there was tons of it, which was the extraordinary thing. But it was a bit terrifying and only just ready in time. I remember you began with, well, we'll get started on such and such a day. Yes, I've still got about 6 puzzles to write at the back end, but that should be fine. And I was thinking, that's brave. Okay, good luck.
There's a quote I've always liked. Don't worry about biting off more than you can chew. Bite off as much as you can and chew as hard as you can. So that was very much my philosophy.
That was your approach.
It was very fun. We are reaching the end of the hour, so we're going to wrap up. I do want to ask you, though, post lockdown, when lockdown stops, are you guys planning on continuing the 2 video a day schedule? Is that on the cards? Are you going to try and have a life again?
I think we are planning to keep going because, it just seems, it's not just that it's popular. Sometimes people actually tell us they need it. Like they're really going to suffer mentally if they're not seeing the videos. And that's a bit scary. We've almost given ourselves a responsibility to some extent. I think post-lockdown, we might get to a point where if one of us takes a holiday, they might not be posting on it. That could happen.
Lazy.
But, we'll try and ensure that it's not simultaneous.
I'm guessing the question you guys ask the most is how many videos do you start and then have to abandon for one reason or another?
It varies.
More than it used to be.
It varies a lot. It's, sometimes weeks can go by without that happening. And then, frankly, I've had days where I've started 3 different puzzles and they have not appeared as videos. So it's so variable.
Have you got certain setters where you're like, okay, if I'm going to try this one, I'll have to, record it 12 hours ahead of time so that I can, if I don't solve it, I can move on to another one.
Yeah, I mean, the testers always give us a heads up as well. Like I've got one by Glipperal that I've not done yet because it says, 2 hours, allowed 2 hours, and this is an absolute beast. And I'm to be honest, I'm pretty scared about it. So I don't, I haven't done that yet.
There may be testers, and I'm neither confirming nor denying it, who either of us would say, yeah, you can do those person's puzzles to the other.
Yeah.
Final question. And this is just something I want to know. Do you two watch the other person's video every day?
Yeah,
I do.
Not always that same day because mine's coming out later. So I may be actually still involved in either recording it or uploading it or something like that when Simon's is coming out. And I might not have time in the evening, but we will always, I think for both of us, we'll always have seen what the other has done. One of the terrifying fears is that one day we will accidentally do the same puzzle twice. So it's best to watch the other person's to make sure that can't happen. That's one amongst many hundreds of terrifying events that could happen on the channel and keep us awake at night.
I feel like people would really enjoy that. I'm surprised you haven't done that as a special event. Both of you tackle the same one, then we can compare the lengths and see who's the fastest solver.
We've done it occasionally. Well, Simon's done walkthroughs of puzzles that I have solved before because he's just been so unsatisfied with my solution.
It's a truly fascinating channel. It's so interesting to me that one of the big viral hits of 2020 was two British people solving Sudokus in real time, no editing, no fancy anything, and then doing the videos.
Yeah, the production values haven't really improved. I was thinking I might treat myself to like a boom microphone stand, though. That would be a luxury I might enjoy at some stage.
I plan to rely on this crutch that we have to perform unedited videos to save myself any of the hassle of editing them.
So that has been the first episode of Cracking the Cryptic. Will there be more? That is a puzzle that we are yet to solve. So if you did enjoy us, let us know. You can email podcast@crackingthecryptic.com. I will relieve you guys of some email duty by taking that one on. Any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
No, thank you. Anyone who's still listening, really thank you. That's remarkable.
And anyone who's listened, who's watched the channel for years, who's a Patreon, who's on Discord, and who's now followed the podcast as well, you are just in it too deep. We love them.
Yeah, we love those people. Yeah.
This podcast was brought to you by Jellybean Games, which is my game production company. We make kid-friendly games that grown-ups love. We have all kinds of games. We have logic games, we have card games, we have party games. We've got the whole kit and caboodle. They're all gorgeous. And coming out very soon is the Cracking the Cryptic book, Cracking the Cryptic's Greatest Hits, which I think we can safely say is going to be the best Sudoku book of all time. Have you guys seen much of the art yet? I can't remember what I've sent you.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, it looks stunning, I think. But I mean, the thing that makes it the best Sudoku book of all time is it contains so many of the best Sudokus of all time. And it's one of those statements that people might wonder, well, how can you say that confidently? Well, I think it is pretty objectively a fact here. Yes,
it's the best Sudoku setters of all time, setting the best Sudokus of all time.
Yeah.
And also the art is very nice. That's the bit I contributed to, so that's really my passion.
The art does the Sudokus justice, which is a high praise indeed.
Thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. You can support the show by going to patreon.com/crackingthecryptic or by visiting www.jellybean.games and using the promo code BOBBINS to get 20% off any of our gorgeous, colourful, delightful board games. I'd particularly recommend Dracula's Feast New Blood, which is a game of logic for 4 to 8 players designed by me. If you enjoyed the show and want to hear more, leave a comment or email podcast@crackingthecryptic.com with any questions you'd like me to ask on the show. We'll be back soon with more about the wonderful world of Sudoku. Bye for now.